I had this impression, I don't know the right word, of being like at the edge of a cliff, but the cliff wasn't there. But it was just this vast darkness, but it wasn't scary. It was what I now know. I don't know if I should explain to you what I now know or what I felt at the time. Maybe I should start with I just it was a knowing. It was something that was very familiar, very comfortable. The next part that I remember is, how do I explain this? Being in, it was like a journey, just basically opening a door that was a white light. So I opened the door and I walked in, I was invited in, and it was, oh, tearful. It was home. So
I want to welcome everybody back to another episode of The Soul Inspired. Today we have Michelle Johnstun with us. She's had a near-death experience. Um, I heard from her through another experiencer on the show, Irene, who was amazing. And I'm just wanting to say thank you so much, Michelle, for being on the show. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to have this conversation with you today.
Same. I'm excited to be here.
We briefly were talking before the show, and I was worried you were gonna say too much right away. That's why we started recording. I Each show I start the same way. I go back to the beginning. I don't know when your NDE happened yet. We'll kind of dig into when that happened. I think you said it's been a while since it happened, but if we can go before that, so unless it was in your infancy, but if we can go before the NDE, I try to get a little bit of information on kind of your childhood, if you had spiritual or religious influences around you, those type of things, but just a brief overview of what your childhood was like.
Yeah. So my childhood was, I don't want to say typical, you know, middle class America, but in a way it was very, very religious. Although my parents would probably say more spiritual, but now that I know what I know, it was more on the religious side. I grew up in a very staunch Christian home, started out Baptist, very involved every Sunday. My mom was a Sunday school teacher, um, and went to vacation Bible school. I was, always the one who memorized the most verses and, I guess maybe the goody two shoes of the group. Um, my mom and dad put us in a Christian school from last year of elementary school through junior high, high school. And in having some really long conversations with her, while actually writing my book, why couldn't we go to public school? She wanted to protect us. She wanted to protect us from the world. She wanted to give us the best possible outcome for a healthy Christian life, to be surrounded by the right people, to be instructed by believers. Um, and so it was a very sheltered life.
Hmm.
And so that was wonderful in many aspects, but in other aspects, when you go out into the world and you live in that sheltered, environment, the world is not quite as nice. And so there were a lot of experiences along the way that I wish I would have had a little bit more unsheltered upbringing. But growing up, I was the middle child. I was the one who kind of flew under the radar, wanted to make it okay for everyone.
Hmm.
My older sister, very strong, very independent, um, really wanted to seek life out on her own, was my understanding. My younger sister, oh my gosh, hell on wheels, and there I was right in between. I was the one who always wanted to make my mom happy. My mom struggled with past traumas in life. And those past traumas made it really difficult for her to live life as a mom, as a wife, as a woman who really didn't know, where she was to be, or maybe she had aspirations, but it didn't work out that way. So it was really hard for her to navigate while raising three daughters. that gives you a little sneak peek of what my life was growing up. I
Right.
really wanted to be the invisible one and just cheer people on, make their life better in any way that I could, show up for them. Didn't know how to show up for myself, but it made me so happy to show up for them.
Mm. So you were kind of a peacemaker and
I was.
the person to make people happy. I've known people like that. I think I somewhat was like that myself, so I can kind of relate to that.
Yeah.
And you know, kind of a lot of people like that sometimes almost get kind of perfectionistic qualities as they get older because you're that certain way, if you go off that, then you'd feel like you're not being yourself, or like there's these things you have to make yourself always be that way all the time. And it can become problematic over time. I'm not saying you were perfectionistic, but I think that
No,
that is a
it's
quality
very
that could happen.
true.
Hmm.
It's a perfected craft, you know. It helps you maintain that control, you know, just that line. It's a safe place to be. And it's also, you know, I mean, there's pros and cons to it, but the upside of it was I love to see people smile. I love to see the surprise in their face when something unexpected came their way. I never did it with the intent of wanting to be acknowledged. Oh my gosh, if I would pray that they wouldn't acknowledge it because I just wanted to see the surprise, the comfort, the joy. I was very empathetic to their feelings of not enough,
Hmm.
you know, and I knew there was so much more that they could give. So even as a child, I may be scrambling a little bit, but even as a child, I knew that I was here for a reason.
Hmm.
I was super confused growing up in my household because there wasn't ever a place for me to be other than that peacemaker. Um, but I just always wanted to know what my purpose was. I just remember as a young child just wondering, you know, when people would say, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I didn't want to be something. I wanted to be the person I was meant to be.
Hmm.
And there's so much space in that thought process.
Right. Yeah.
When I was young, there was we lived on the side of a mountain, and there was this enormous rock that I would climb up and sit on the top, and I would be there for what felt like hours. I know it was a long time because the light changed, but I would. It was the closest I could get to, in my mind, heaven, to have a conversation with God of like, why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? This
Hmm.
doesn't make sense. I had all these questions, but in the world that we grew up in, the Bible was the answer, and you just didn't have questions. You your life was the Bible, and the Bible was your life. And all the answers were there. You just had to read it. And that wasn't necessarily good enough for me. I would go to mountains, anything with lots of trees, and I would walk through and I would ask the same questions. I just always had this insane desire of knowing more. And little did I know that it was the knowing that led me to all of these conversations and these passions of knowledge to do more.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, that was my childhood.
Wow. Well, thanks for sharing that. And that could have been a little bit of a kind of a predictive, if you're always seeking this knowingness, maybe you knew at some point you were going to go through, like maybe your soul, we haven't talked about it yet, may have knew this event was going to happen, that this was, you were kind of seeking more. I mean, I was the same way, but I never had an NDE. I've said that before, but there was always this wanting to understand a little bit more. It seems like one of the questions I was going to ask you because I was going to ask you when the NDE happened, and had you had any, now I know you're raised in a Christian type lifestyle, but I hadn't known if up until the NDE if you had had any experiences that would make you question this space a little more, or if it didn't happen
Yeah,
until the NDE happened.
yeah. I did. I found out. I think my last year in high school, I was in what was it called? I was a flag girl. I twirled the flag in a parade.
Mhm.
A flag girl. I don't know what it's. I don't remember what it's called. But I passed out at a parade. I just blacked out. That was my first experience of this heart issue that I was born with that I didn't know that I had.
Mm.
Fast forward to being pregnant with my third child. So that would have been around age 26 or 27. Um, I That's when I was diagnosed with the problem because I kept blacking out and it became very dangerous for my pregnancy. And so my last two pregnancies, I have four children, by the way. Last two pregnancies were planned deliveries with cardiologists and, it was induced, it was very controlled environment for the protection of me as well as the baby. And so what made me question along the way was I there were this heart issue. What it is my heart would just stop like a light switch went off, and I would be out, and then my heart would race so fast that it was like stroke like racing level. And so in the process of trying to not identify, but don't be stressed, watch your lifestyle, all of these things. I would search for peace, anything peaceful, anything with serenity. Where we lived, I wanted to make sure that the drive going in was this welcoming home, this feeling of serenity to try and
Mhm.
keep my environment stress free.
Mhm.
um, I would seek retreats, female retreats, to soulful retreats. And I'll tell you what, the first one I went to scared me to death because it was a little bit woo woo, in my words.
Mm.
But it was very, very authentic, very soul oriented. And I didn't even know what that meant. I didn't know the difference between the heart and the soul. Um, And so it was things like that were it was automatically questioned just by the sheer nature of what the program was or the retreat was or people that I met having trying to have a conversation in that retreat. I felt uh, so off my game
Mm.
because soulful experiences are not controlled environments.
Right.
And so that was really unique to me. But what that led to, that kind of conversation and that kind of experience doesn't ever leave you because once it touches your soul just grows. It
Right.
becomes more a part of who you are.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of what happened. And one of the biggest things that made me question my very existence was when I was working as a regional for a jewelry company. And I had a simple accident at work that shouldn't have ever happened. I knelt down, a big, huge safe, knelt down to open it up, and my assistant manager asked me a question. And all I did was turn my head, and my knee blew out.
Wow.
Complete blowout of my knee. A loud pop sent me to the floor. Well, because it was a workers' comp type of situation, I had to jump through the hoops of workers' compensation and do what they told me to do. So I was non-weight bearing for 2 years. Took me out of my job, laying flat on my back, asking, you can only imagine how many questions I would ask. Why? What is this for? I barely could get up to go to the restroom. People had to bring me my food. I lost all my muscle tone. I felt useless. I was very, very self loathing, and it wasn't a comfortable place to be. And then I would have to pick myself back up. And this happened day in and day out for 2 solid years until they decided that they were going to give me a full knee replacement. It was a donor knee replacement, which it was pieces of a 17-year-old German male. that had a biking accident, and I got all the pieces of his knee put into mine. So I've always said, I don't, it takes a lot to stop me. It takes an act of God to stop me and knock me on my butt to make me look up and listen. It was 2 years of looking up and screaming and yelling and just being so angry. But then, gosh, that's a huge part of my journey.
Mm.
So many things happened that were soulful experiences, remembrances, taking me back to that rock, for example, of the why and what was I here for? And surely there's more purpose. A lot of those questions for sure.
Right. And so the knee incident happened and the recovery of that so it was a couple years after that that the NDE happened, or I'm just trying to put
No,
this
it was
together.
2 years after that that the NDE happened.
Right. Okay. Okay. And
So that
so
was the biggest, if you will, questioning. Because you asked the question, what was there anything that happened? That question, it was that questioned every part of my existence, my thought process, my heart, um, the soulful experiences that I had, the books that were dropped off by strangers, conversations with God book. I'm like, I don't want to, I have conversations with God. I don't need another conversation with
right.
God.
Right.
But if you've ever read those books, that it's a little bit more than that.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Wow. And I can attest to, I mean, going through the knee issue that you had and all that stuff. I just mentioned you before the show started. I just had this the stone that I had to pass, this bladder stone or this whatever you call it,
kidney stone.
kidney stone, and I had I've experienced pain in my life, but I've been very fortunate and blessed to not go through too much. And this was the first time where I had something, and I thought, wow, you like this pain exists, like the empathy towards my fiance giving birth, and these types of things. Like I was just like, wow, like I can't believe that the human can go through this much pain and still
Right?
get through
Yeah.
it. And so, as someone might hear kidney stone and think nothing of it, but it's a pretty painful experience as we talked about. And it was just kind of, so I can relate to that. You're going through this after you have this knee issue. What leads into the ND? Like, how did this happen? Obviously, you said the heart issue. I'm assuming that's where it's around. But if
That is where it's around.
maybe we can lead into how this happened
Yeah.
and we'll go through the experience a little bit.
So a couple years later, I think because of not being able to move around and whatnot, I started to have some physical issues. My heart issues certainly didn't go away. It ended up that I needed a radical hysterectomy, and the doctor that performed that, it was very quick decision. He neglected to give me hormone replacement. And because of my heart condition and not having that replacement, um, I ended up having a stroke while in the hospital.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it was a stroke that got you, but stroke, obviously, that's why they call it heart and stroke. It's associated.
Yeah.
So, okay. So you had a stroke in the hospital during.
I thank goodness in the hospital because
Mhm.
oftentimes you don't come back from strokes. And so they were able to reverse this, the happenings of that stroke, so to speak. Spent 8 days in the hospital, and I apparently, of course, I don't remember this, but apparently I asked the doctor this question. I said, "Who am I?" And she said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, you've taken everything out of me. Am I still human? Am I a male? Am I a female? Like, who am I?"
Wow. This,
And
and this was after
this
everything
was
had been done.
after I was probably around the fourth or fifth day in the hospital.
Okay.
Um, And let me clarify a little bit. I had the surgery. I went home. I ended up back in the hospital. I was at his offices were above the ER, so I went for a normal checkup. Had the stroke there. They rushed me down into the ER. I ended up in the hospital. So there was a little bit of time in between, but I asked him that question, and he's my husband said he didn't really know how to answer that. So that was the first part of that. I came out of that stroke not being able to talk. Um, not I was able to walk, but with assistance. My gait was off because I had the stroke in the hospital. I didn't have this, stronger residual, but the hardest thing was the communication. And so I, I just remember during that 8 days, probably day 5, 6, and 7, mostly, of this insane quietness, silence. Um, Not be necessarily because I couldn't talk, but I just I didn't know if I was dreaming. I didn't know. Um, well, a lot of times I didn't really know where I was at, but yet I knew where I was at. I had this residual feeling from my near-death experience that, gosh, just left me with so many questions of remembering where I was, but wait, this isn't where I am now.
Right.
Um, I've heard a lot of people talk about near death experiences and having, these crazy, wild white lights and, dark tunnels and things like that. I didn't necessarily have that. Although, what I can say is, I, how do I explain this? See, I'm like there right now. I had this impression, I don't know the right word, of being like at the edge of a cliff, but the cliff wasn't there. But it was just this vast darkness, but it wasn't scary. It was what I now know. I don't know if I should explain to you what I now know or what I felt at the time. Maybe I should start with I just it was a knowing. It was something that was very familiar, very comfortable, um, a lot of information. Um, but I'll tell you, you can't delineate it like I just stated it. That's the best way I can describe it. It wasn't like I was standing there and I was saying, "Oh, there's so much information." I was a part of it. I was in it. It was a part of me, and I knew it was okay. I felt so uh, safe.
Mhm.
The next part that I remember is, how do I explain this? Being in, it was like a journey. Just basically opening a door that was a white light. So I opened the door and I walked in. I was invited in, but no visual, no auditory. I just went in, and it was, oh, tearful. It was home.
Mhm.
Sorry if I get um
That's okay.
it was it was so serene. I can't say it was white. It was more, everything was translucent. It was very clear. Um, I recognized, not visually, but soulfully, I recognized every single person there. They knew me. I knew them. I knew the souls. Um, it was such an amazing welcome home kind of feeling. Um, and it was, I just sat back. I had to take a seat because I was overwhelmed. And in my book, I go through, everyone was in white, with, gold, like gold shoes, gold bracelets, gold jewelry, but they were translucent.
Hmm.
And it made sense there, but if I try to make sense here, how does that make sense? And
Right.
to me, that doesn't matter. And I I just kind of sat back and watched. I was mesmerized. And this person came through that everyone absolutely adored, absolutely adored. And they didn't bow down to her as though it was this king, queen, royalty type of thing, but it was out of absolute complete reverence.
Hmm.
And so that person came over, started coming towards me, and our eyes locked, and that was me. Yeah, that was me. And if you can imagine the feeling of me growing up, wanting to be so invisible and being that in between person and not wanting to be the person out there, but the person behind the scenes, to know that that was me, that was being given such reverence, was mind blowing to me. And then um, two other beings, people, souls, came towards me, and I recognized them immediately. And I, that was my father and my mother, not my earthly father and mother, but that was my, who I believe to be God, source, higher being. Um, but he came over and he put his hand on my heart, and I put my hand on his heart. And the communication, the 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 knowing type of communication, so much said, so much felt, all in one instance.
Mhm.
Um,
Like telepathic type communication, which is really
I mean, I
quickly.
guess that's the best way I could describe it.
Hmm.
But it was here. It was
Hmm.
um, like it was an imprint on my soul, a remembrance that connected all the dots, that made everything make sense. Flashbacks of being on that rock and him being right there with me the entire time, answering the questions, but I didn't necessarily hear
Mm.
the answers in the order that they were given. So many instances of when I reached out, lying on the bed for those 2 years and being so angry, just in soulful time answering those questions. Um, it just it healed me. It healed this empty space in me, and it was glorious. It was wonderful. It was impactful.
Wow. So you were, I love this piece. I wanted to pause on that for a moment. So you're in this moment of having, you know, the the God figure, the source figure with you, and knowing that the moments in your life when you were questioning things or speaking outwardly, that they were there, right there with you, even though you were in the physical and you couldn't physically see them, the presence was connected. So you were given that you were
Remembrance.
remembrance and you were, so you were seeing it kind of like a movie screen, like a flash of this was a moment here and he was right
Yeah,
there, she was right there, whichever it was, their godly figure was right there. That's interesting. So God was always there with you.
always.
Hmm.
And I think I knew that when I was younger because I was very sensitive um, to things like that, very empathetic. But I just didn't. I wasn't living in the environment that I could investigate that and put it all together.
Do we know when within the time of the stroke this all occurred, or no? Is this just kind of like all mangled right now? You're trying to put it together, or do you know when this part happened? Was there like an actual incident that happened that may have occurred?
The only thing how I can answer that is days 1 through 4, I literally don't remember. So this was November 2009. I don't remember. Um, but day 5, 6, and 7, day 5 for sure is when I had the wherewithal, if you will,
Hmm.
to have so many of these soulful impressions. Obviously, not being able to talk. So I really went, it was still in me. It was still in me. And yeah,
When you
so no, I don't know how long.
when you mentioned you said earlier on, and we'll figure out what kind of if this continued or what happened next, but you said everything was clear and it felt safe, it felt okay. Like when the door opened, there was the white light. It felt like home, just to bring it
Yeah,
back a little bit. Did it, I don't know how to explain this the way I'm asking this, but did it feel and look as real as this? Like, was there a
yeah.
realness to it?
The best way I can describe it is, have you ever been to a place that you haven't didn't know that you were don't remember being there? They call it deja vu, maybe, but it's
Hmm.
so tangible. It's like I have been here. Like I came. That was my I came from there. So,
Hmm.
but I chose to leave there to come here, and it was that remembrance that was kind of like what I was getting at when I said there was an invitation without any auditory, or it was just I it was open the door and go in. I was meant to go in, and it was very it was I still feel it. It was very tangible, very
Hmm.
it was very real. It was very real.
I've never asked this question to anyone. Did it feel like you were fully there or kind of moving into that space, or were you fully engaged there?
At first, that's when I had to take a seat back and just kind of, but when that spiritual being came towards me and our eyes locked and I knew that was me, I was there.
Okay.
I was there.
Hmm. So you slowly moved into it, kind of realigning yourself because you were just here.
Realigning. Yes.
And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay. And you're starting to kind of go into there. And, you know, who knows what was going on during those 3 days. Obviously, when you've had a stroke, like your body's going through a lot. And I've even talked to many people who've left their body and had these experiences while their body hadn't physically died yet. They had just left the vehicle,
Yeah.
if you will, for a temporary moment. Some people, I say it a lot of times on the show, a lot of people who are about to get in a really bad car accident, they will leave their body and watch the car accident to not experience the pain. I'm not saying everybody will not have
Yeah.
to experience their pain, but you know, so you didn't, we don't know if you physically had a flat line or anything like that, but you still went into this space, is what I'm trying to get at.
Absolutely.
Hmm. Yeah. And when you described it, I've never been to had anyone describe it like this. People were in white and gold, but translucent. I can actually kind of picture it in a sense because um, it's a different, it's a different look and feel to this physical. But if you think about gold and white and a translucent version of that, I mean, if we're energy, then our bodies are made from energy. So it's a different type of dimensional reality than this. So it makes
Absolutely.
perfect sense. This is actually more of a dense, hardened reality. Like it's physically dense and hard, whereas that is more of a probably a
Energy.
an energetic space that can form and change as you will, kind of thing. That's the
Yeah.
way I'm like that's the way you described it. I'm a very visual person, so I don't know if the audience
It's
is
that's
going through
no,
that too,
that's
but
dead on. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's the way kind of I
No
was
pun
seeing it.
intended.
Yeah, right. Um, you said you saw yourself. I wanted to verify that before we continue what happened. So you saw yourself, like you said, you saw this person coming through that had this importance, but it was more of like a not importance like bow down to, but like appreciative of importance. And then you said you saw yourself. Are you saying that was you? I'm kind of
That was
confused
me.
by this.
No, that was me.
Okay.
How I, with all the inner work that I've done, I know this is really fast forwarding a lot with my healing. Um, I believe that to be my highest self.
Hmm.
I yeah, I believe that to be my highest self. And
Okay.
um it was definitely that there's I there was this absolute 1,000% knowing and recognition, and that recognition given back to me, like looking in
Again,
the mirror.
again, being here and we're in our physical. So for anyone listening, you're you right now. This is who we are. This is what we feel we are. Let's put it that way. The way I've always described it or seen it is like this is our self, and then these are these pieces of ourselves that can do things like embody, like come into an incarnation and do these things. It seems like you were, this is just my interpretation, and you may see it different. It seems like you were coming back from this physical, but then you knew that yourself is always there. Like your higher self is always existing within this place. And you were witnessing that and kind of almost merging is the way that that's the way I'm picking up on the way you're describing it. And
I
I've
can
had
see
no,
that. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I can see that. I have a very strong belief system, and this belief system was given to me, and then I heard it over and over again through different uh, speakers. I fully believe that we are all spiritual beings living a human experience. And when you think of this existence this way, this reality this way, it makes so much more sense than not thinking of it that way. And so that connection was so normal to me.
Mm. It felt normal. Like
Oh,
this.
100%.
So this experience felt like a normal, it didn't feel like scary or like what is happening. It was a very normal
No,
feeling.
I, it was like a welcome home.
Hmm. Was your personality intact in any way? Did you feel yourself? Did you feel Michelle? Not your name, Michelle, but you in your essence of who you are.
In my essence of who I am, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you did feel.
Well, let me back up just a little bit.
Hmm.
Yes. Yes, to a point, but then when that connection was made, that merge was made, was the knowing of, oh my gosh, so much more.
Mm.
Like and that's what I brought back with me,
Would you
was
kind
that remembrance of so much more.
almost like when we're here and you're you and I'm me, this is almost like an infant like behavior. Like we're kind of like
Yeah,
moving from this is who we are and we think this is all we are, and then we go into that and we're like, oh, we're so much more. That was just like we were just experiencing a piece of who we were. Is that?
yeah. I mean, what most people think of us, of our existence here, is so minute compared to who we are there. We we forget. It gets lost in this human existence. Um, and the remembrance of that so much more, and bringing that back here, that
Mhm.
given my remembering my purpose of why I chose to come here, the experiences that I wanted to have, because you don't have human experiences there,
Right.
and so um I'm not going to lie, there were times where I would question, why on earth would I want this human experience? Well, later on in life it shows why that was so important.
Mm.
It helps mold you into the person you were meant to be. But yeah, sorry, I got lost in my answer to that question.
That's okay. I think for me, talking to so many people who've had NDEs, it makes me really understand when, if someone goes to their side and has we'll call it a godly experience, they feel like they're them true selves, and then they come back here and they struggle a bit. It's almost like you let go of that part again for a while. Like you go and you witness who you are in your essence, like this bigger piece of who you are, and then you not have to come back, but you come back, and now you're expected to be Michelle again. Now you're expected to be this person that you were up until your NDE, and I would think that
Yeah,
that would be a struggle in knowing how much more we actually are. This is probably why a lot of people come back and have major life changes and these
yeah,
types of things. Does that make sense?
100% it does. When when it was time for me to go, um, it was at the end of hand on my heart, and just that exchange of energy of that remembrance. That was, oh, so I know I'll never forget it. But at the end of that, it was now time to go. And I remember thinking, no,
Right.
no, like, thank you for giving me all this information. This is wonderful. These are all the questions that I've had. But there was so much more, that my purpose hadn't been fulfilled. That there was, I got lost in the transition of it all. And I needed to go back because I was at a point in my life where so much anger of why I was here, and knowing that there was something that I was supposed to be doing, but I couldn't remember what it was. It ran so deep, it hit my bones. It ran so deep. And I, it wasn't a matter of look up and you'll get the answer. No, I needed to go back and have that energy exchange of remembrance, and to bring that back and do what I needed to do here. And when I did come back, um, what I was left with was going back to, I really am careful when I say that dark space, because it's not dark in the spiritual realm. It's not darkness like it is here. But it was very vast, very open. I can stand. I could close my eyes and go there right now, and be there, and I can feel it, and it's very helpful, because it's every hope, every dream, every thought, every experience, every desire from this lifetime, past lifetimes, ever experienced is all right there.
Hmm.
And a lot of times I'll go back there just to ground and reconnect and remember. It's a very sacred place to me, for sure. But when I came back, what I was left with was a broken body, a broken heart, inability to speak, to voice anything that I had experienced, and doctor's appointments, so many days of the week, just trying to get back to this earthly presence that I just didn't even want to be a part of.
Hmm.
I had so much to say, I had so much to do, but over space and time, gave into that, and learned how to. I went to speech therapy and occupational therapy, and learned how to do a lot of that. I was left with some disabilities. Well, in this earthly realm, they're considered disabilities. I choose to think differently, but I lost a lot of memory, from childhood. Blank space. You tell me that I, you know, I don't know, was married 4 times. Okay, I was married 4 times. I have no recollection.
Hmm.
But what I was also left with was this knowing, this remembrance, and needed needed help decoding all of that and putting it in its place. And that's what came next, was people that came into my life, that, much like this, um, that were my guides. Shamanic experiences, never even talked about near-death experience with anyone. I just was left with this insane knowing and remembrance, but of what and where,
Hmm.
and how to put it all together, and what was I supposed to do with it, and who am I to do, past traumas and childhood experiences of not being enough and not worthy, and being, told that continuously by verbiage or by action, was so incongruent with this person over here, with this remembrance and this knowing, and how to deal with all that. Fear was a huge control for me going forward from there. Absolutely controlled my life. So on my healing journey, I started researching, and everything I wrote down, I started journaling. What I couldn't say out loud, I said on paper. And I just took one step forward at a time, and things started to make sense. And um, I, about 2 years ago, I guess, so this would have been about 15 years past that,
Hmm.
of these different mentors, and this guru and that guru, and I went to Oregon to have to look at past lives and what that. I just was searching. I needed
Hmm.
somebody to stop and say, Michelle, this is. I needed that experience up there to imprint on my soul, to
Hmm.
just stop me and say, this is what it is. But that wasn't my journey. I had to, in order for me to help others, I had to walk this journey. And so that's what I did. And about 2 years ago, we were moving, and I pulled out all these journals and I started reading them. And that's where all the dots connected through all the healing that I had done, inner work that I had done, learning how to ground myself, what that meant, um, who God is, who source is, whatever terminology you want to use. Because the God that I met wasn't the God that I was told about in
Hmm.
my upbringing, my Baptist upbringing, into non-denominational, to all the vacation Bible school. It wasn't that person. That person was a cartoon character compared to who God really is.
Hmm.
And it, but as I was reading through these journals, I just had this strong impression. I kept hearing right, right. Now, if you talk to my teachers in school, I was like a high C, low B, just kind of flew under the radar again. Didn't want to be real high, but didn't want to fail.
Hmm.
For this book to have a voice is they would say, who would have thought? I say, who would have thought? But this was something that needed to be written. This was all those entries into the journal was my deepest soulful thoughts, my learning, my remembrance. And it took about 2 years for me to actually, well, it took about a year for me to start it. After knowing, I just kept hearing right. I would go to Reiki sessions, and they would say, what impression? I'm just being told to write. I'm so sick and tired of being told to write. Write what? Well, it was this.
Hmm.
I'm not a very good, I've come to the conclusion, I don't listen really well. And if I did, I probably would do things in a little bit, better order. But nonetheless, this came. I'm looking at my book over here. If you guys are anyone's wondering why I keep looking this direction, um, I it was so important, and the knowing and the remembrance came so much stronger than the lack of being enough or worthiness, because it became incongruent. How can I be here and feel this way?
Hmm.
Well, because this is not me. This is the human part of me. Michelle, this is me.
Right.
And this is my purpose. This is who I am, and this is who I am walking forward. And so in my book, there's a line in there that says I had to die to become her.
Hmm.
And what that means is I had to just say no to all of the other traumatic experiences and past childhood hurts and all of these earthly things that I learned so much from, but I didn't need to carry that weight with me. It already served its purpose. I gained the experience that I came here to gain. I didn't need to bring all of the toxic stuff with it. So I had to die to that person and really rise to be the person I am today.
Wow. We've said a lot of things there, beautifully said. And first, I also always say thanks for sharing the experience. I know this is the first time you're really digging deep around the
First
experience,
time.
so I really appreciate it. And on the Soul Inspire, we really do appreciate it. The book is called Survival to Sovereignty, I believe, right? That you wrote. So we'll put a link in all that stuff so people can check it out. I'm assuming within it you dig even deeper into the experience and the things that were going on, but I you know, I want to touch on this only because this is one of my drives as to why I started Soul Inspired is the thing that always led me into this field was I had anxiety as a kid and a fear of death. And I was thinking I thought, oh, we just turn to dust and that's it. And I think, oh, what's the point? And I'd have these kind of weird moments where I'd look at my hands and not understand the purpose of anything. And I was just always inquisitive about what was the purpose of doing everything if it just turns to dust. So, and then that would lead into anxiety and fear and severe fear. And I've always wanted there to be a space where people can listen to others who've had experiences and say, okay, so that person had to have a near death experience in order to find themselves. How can we find ourselves without going through pain, suffering, and a near death experience? How can we do that in our day to day? Like, what are the
Be
things that we
curious.
could be doing that would maybe get us there without having to go
Yeah.
through the hardships as much to help?
Um, well, I initially I said be curious, which is one of the things I tell my clients. But it's connection. That's one of the most important things is the connection that you have with yourself and with those around. How do I explain this without going super coachy? Um, the connection on the other side is effortless. There's no thought process. It's a knowing. It it takes practice to get there, but the practice it takes is to let go of what is here and still reside here, if that makes any sense. Um, it's I tell clients that want to know about this experience or yeah, how to become themselves her. I say in my book to become her is you have to be curious about everything. If you think of a little child who are closest to the other side than we are, because they are more recently departed, every think of it through a child's eyes and seeing a butterfly for the first time, you know, being curious, why does the bee buzz? What, just all of those little things, or just looking, you know, up in the sky and looking at the cloud formations. Anything that has to do with nature, with life here on Earth is not just human beings. There's so much more life out there. It's that connection that connects us with our souls and that remembrance of where we came from. And so many of us lose that, or they don't want to become in touch with it. It's also understanding the journey. And that's where mentors, coaches, they've got a unique gift in helping make that connection and letting go of the past and helping people realize that the past served its purpose and that's why it's in the past.
Mhm.
We are here in the present. So we need to be present and remember all of those little things that bring us such joy and such peace. Um, and don't worry about the future because the future hasn't happened yet. And the future can change depending on how we go through and how present we are right here and right now.
Mhm.
And so not, everyone's going to remember differently. That everyone came here for a different reason, but what
Mhm.
we all came here for was that human experience. And my gosh, if we could just remember that, we would coexist with such grace and such ease and such abundance. And those three words were given to me while I was there: grace, ease, and abundance. I live my life by grace, ease, and abundance. A real quick snapshot: you should be able to go through life with grace, ease, and abundance. Every decision that you make should be filled with grace, ease, and abundance. If a decision is made and it feels yucky and it
Right.
doesn't flow, it's not the right decision. And guess what? Mic drop for everybody. Abundance is not money.
Mhm.
That read my book. There's a whole couple chapters on wealth and abundance and what it actually means. I consider myself to be the wealthiest person on this planet.
Mhm.
Um, wealth and abundance are those little synchronicities that come when you pay attention, when you're present. Sometimes it's money, very rarely it's not. It's opportunity, it's peace, it's joy. If everyone could have that in their life, everyone would feel so much more wealthier. Now, that doesn't mean that money isn't there. Money is energy, just like I was energy up there. But you know what? If you don't live your life with grace, ease, and abundance, how can you keep yourself open to receive the energy of money that should be coming your way?
Hmm. I love that. And something I speak with people about a lot is what fills you up. Like, what is it
That's
that
right.
fills you up? So I'll talk to someone and say, well, they're going through a lot of life challenges. I'll say, think back to a time where it felt really good. What was going on? Oh, once a year I go on this trip and we go through this forest. Okay, so how often are you doing that? Like, are you putting yourself in that place? Well, no, I can't because I have this obligation and this. So there's all these things that we do, but then I'll say, no, you got to put yourself in that place because you're leaving that energy. You're changing you have to be in the energy. Someone who likes to write music like myself, or that makes them feel good. That's why I do a lot of coaching in music and singing. And they come every week and they light up and it's like they refill their tank. It's like put
Yep.
yourself in those places and it'll lead you into becoming who you are truly, right? It's almost like if you're not doing those things, you're actually kinking kind of like like that essence of who you are. You're like putting a kink in it and you're losing that energy. And that's where you lead down to, I don't want to say that's what leads to dis-ease and all these things, but I truly believe a lot of it does because we're in this different space, right? We're not filling ourselves up with the things that make us feel joyous. And so that's when you say that, that's abundance to me, is feeling abundant in the things that light you up in your life. So I
Mhm.
can relate to everything you're saying with that.
The strange thing
Yeah.
is well, not strange. The reality is everyone that wants to be on the abundance train or the wealth train or the train of, oh, I can't do this because of this, I can't do that because of that. Those obligations don't mean anything unless you have that joy. I mean, you reached that obligation because you were reaching for something, you got that, and now that controls your life
Hmm.
and you've forgotten who you are. That's a big part of what I do is helping people remember the why. Why did you start this business? Because I used to go into business coaching or consulting and we would fix all of the little, things. I can go into a business and point out three, four, five red flags, fix them and walk away. And then they call me back and they say it's not fixed. Well, it's not fixed because now we need to flip over and we need to do some personal development
Hmm.
because why did you start this business? Why, what was your reason? What did you want to do? What was the outcome that you wanted to have? Okay, that's what you want. And they get all excited and giddy inside. And, this is what we have. Oh, we got some work to do because this stopped and this took over.
Right.
That obligation shouldn't take over. It
Hmm.
should, it should merge. It should become part of that new part of you. And if that's all that's you, I wouldn't want to be that person either.
Right. Yeah. No, I get that. And you've been someone who's had NDE, you've gone over, you've felt this true essence of who you are.
Yeah,
And then you come back and uh you have this connection. I think the hard part again is I talk to people who've had these connections and it's almost like it's too bad we all couldn't feel what that is. Like, we couldn't just remember that. But I think there's a purpose to that. I think there's a purpose to this amnesia we get because I think a lot of us, if we always felt that connection, maybe it would kind of be pointless. Because I believe there's kind of like this point of trying to find ourselves within this space of, because it feels lonely here because we feel disconnected. So it's try to find yourself. How do you get reconnected to who you truly are? And that's, I think, part of the purpose of life. That's just
yeah,
what I get from a lot of people that have had these things. Did you ever have the actual, you mentioned when you were younger, you had a lot of fears. Did you ever had a fear of death? And like, has that
I
completely, like,
did.
do you still have that now that you've had this? Like, is that,
No,
no.
no,
Okay.
no, not at all. Not at all. I did have a tremendous fear of death. I lost people that were monumental in my life. Um, and death to me was just this extreme heartache, and people left and never came back. And so what was the again, what was the purpose? What is the purpose in that? And then asking the questions, where do they go? They go to heaven. Well, what, they just go back to the earth, like you said, go back to dust and live happily ever after in these golden gates with golden paved roads. And that's what was told to me when I was growing up, and that's so not what it is. And I look forward to being here and doing what I am supposed to be doing here, and then returning when my time is done. Um, because to me, there's no difference in the action. It is me wholeheartedly, and and it'll be interesting to see where I choose to go next.
One of the beautiful things you also said, and that some people might have taken this a different way, especially anybody who has religious backgrounds or anything that listen to the show, you had mentioned that God was like a cartoon character in comparison to the God that you felt. I think that actually should be something that we look at as a beautiful thing, because what that
Mm-hmm.
actually means is the God that we're taught through whatever denomination we are, whatnot, if we're holding that at a high standard already, well, consider what you just said, that it's like a cartoon character in comparison to what you felt God is. So that should actually be something that should be a good thing for anyone
Yeah.
listening. Yeah.
Well, because it's real. A cartoon character isn't real. A
Hmm.
cartoon character you enjoy. You maybe see a little bit of yourself in. It's a different reality than what you are. It can be fun. It could be, inspiring. But God, who He is, oof, it's, you know, growing up, I heard this term a lot, omnipresent, this presence. And that is truly who He is he's this presence that is not separate from us. It's someone that uh um so many people grow up thinking that He's not obtainable. That's so not who He is.
Mm-hmm.
um I mean, if you think of we talked about this earlier, your child, you know that that's real, but there's this thing, this knowing, this celebration, this remembrance, this um, undeniable feeling that you have. When you look into their eyes, it's very very similar to that. You
Hmm.
wouldn't exchange that with anything. You wouldn't give that away. You wouldn't abandon that. You wouldn't like that.
Mm.
That is so much a part of who you are.
Right. Right. And we probably
It's
get
so
mixed up and
fulfilling.
we get confused with the physical because we
We
can't
do.
physically see God. Right. So I can see why there's some confusion around that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's like it's been beautiful. How do with the work that you do, the book and all these things, do you have like a way people can connect with you to a website or anything like that where people can find your information?
Yeah. So I keep my email open to everyone, which is super easy. Michelle at michellejconsulting.com. It's also in the back of my book, and my website, michellejconsulting.com. And I made it super easy. Facebook, uh, Instagram, Michelle J Consulting, and I'm even on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a lot of my business, but it's transitioning into this experience, and a different looking at leadership in a different way,
Hmm.
for sure.
Well, I love that. I mean, and you're coming from this background, just from my own, like listening to you do this, because I used to be in kind of like the more business world of things too. At one point in my life, I did banking and all these different things. And you're someone who has the ability to kind of maybe merge the two, right? Because we
Yeah,
can get so caught up in the physicality of like, how do I make my business more successful and productive? Well, but why did you start? Like, what? Like, do you have a purpose? Is there like something that you're driving towards? Because if it's just for monetary gain, that doesn't give you a good feeling. And people will read that. Like, people are, I think a lot of people don't give other people credit for how they, Like if you meet someone, you know how genuine they are, you
Yeah.
know? So if you're running a business and you're wanting to have more success within that business, are people actually reading that from your energy that you're putting out?
Yeah, I've been very successful in the business world. And I feel like this is before my near death experience, even.
Hmm.
I feel like I've been successful in the business world because I've always had that part of me that is that much different than everyone else. And when after that experience, it just became more prevalent. And I actually gained even more success in the corporate world realm. And what people need to understand is you have to have a great foundation in business. And part of that foundation is your why. Even on a business plan, it's one of the questions on a business plan that a bank wants to see. You know that in banking is what is the purpose of this business? Who are you helping? And how are you going to achieve that? And then they want to know about the numbers. Well, guess what? You cannot get to those numbers if you forget why you're doing this, knowing who your customer is and treating them well. And that's your internal customer as well, which is your employees. You hire people for a reason. You saw something in them. Let them produce. Let them empower them to do the job to act upon your vision, and everyone will rise. And it always comes back to the client or the customer. Why am I losing clients? Why can't I keep a front desk? Or I can't keep a marketing person or a director of sales?
Hmm.
Well, when you make it all about the money, which I know it is the bottom line, you lose sight in
Hmm.
the whole purpose of this business. If you don't have customers and you don't have employees, what is the purpose of money? You're not going to get it. And so we need to backtrack and we need to fix just those, the culture.
Hmm.
I think things are turning around. For the longest time, the culture was stated, but it was never enacted. And now it's reversing back. I've seen that switch. And I've seen a lot of companies become way more successful if they remember that culture is so important. People buy into that culture.
Hmm.
You've got to be able to act upon it.
And then take accountability for change that you need.
Exactly.
That's a big one, right?
Exactly.
Because it's hard because a lot of people get into that space of, well, I'm not going to change things up. They're almost too proud. And so you got to be able to step back and reset and get back to that space. So just from running my own business, like there's things that you always have to kind of go back and remind yourself why you're doing these things. We've talked a little bit of everything kind of you do. And I always end each show the same way. And I always ask everyone you went over to the other side, you had this experience, you've learned a lot, and you wrote a book. I always kind of present it like this. If the other side is the way it is, if it's loving and safe and truly who you are at your deepest core, what would be the purpose of coming here and doing this physical experience? Like, why do we come here and have this earthly bound experience?
Well, that's a question I asked myself for a long time. What does it mean, to be a spiritual being having this human experience? On Earth here, we are a bunch of humans, and I think the end goal, no matter what you believe, is you want to end this life in a peaceful. You want to know you're going somewhere better than where you're at right now. And so there we we don't have these human experiences. You can talk about joy and peace and pain and fear. What is fear? Fear, it's like words up there versus coming here and experiencing that. And how do you take this, euphoric um, experience from where I was and bring it here to earth and make a difference? Well, we have to live this human experience to put the two together and then teach others how they can live. Some people call it timelines, this reality, that reality. I fully believe, and I do myself live this way, is I can create my own reality and still live here with with ease. So the reality I choose to live in. It's maybe just a mindset, breaking it down a little bit simpler. It's a mindset that we can choose to have, which is, who are we going to be? How are we going to treat others? What do we aspire to be? Where are we going? Who do we want to come with us? Those are those connections, those relationships. We all need relationships. We are human beings. We are so relationship heavy and experience. What does it mean to be present, and how can that change one person's outlook on life? Um, that is the experience that we want to have to make our overall experience whole.
Mm. A lot of what I got from what you just said kept kind of stemming back to how it's impacting others,
Yeah,
right? And I think that's what you're saying. Is that's kind of, so would that be our one of our main purposes as to why we come and do this, is
absolutely.
to the impact that we can make on
Absolutely.
others.
We
Interesting.
all, yeah,
Yeah.
we all bring our own spiritual experience to this
Hmm.
planet, and we grow and we become better,
Wow.
impactful human beings.
I've loved this talk, Michelle. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing briefly about your experience. Again, I'm sure in your book you go a little even deeper. I would encourage anyone to check out, again, it's called Survival to Sovereignty. Is that the entire name of the book?
Survival to sovereignty, the choice to become her. And you can change the her to him, but
Hmm.
long story with that, but yeah, you can change the her to him. I've had many men read the book, and they've replaced that, and the whole book is just a disclaimer. It's written in kind of a third person because this book is not about me. This book is about you, the reader. And if you can find yourself in that book, in the end, you're a changed person.
Mm. I love
You'll
that.
have that remembered.
And they can find that on your website and all that.
Yeah,
So I really appreciate you being here. This has been a great talk. I always reach out to the soul inspired community and say, please continue to like, share, and subscribe. If this show spoke to you and you know somebody that would speak to, please share it. And we can keep getting amazing guests like Michelle on. Thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate
you're
it.
welcome. My pleasure.
So